What's your favorite story about your dog? I love the personalities that come with these animals and the crazy things that can happen because of them. One of my favorite stories to tell is about my older dog, Tucker. When he was around 4 or 5, my mom got a promotion at work, so we decided to cook a really fancy dinner. Mom and I have things going on the stove and in the oven, and normally Tucker is right there wedged between us and the counter begging for food. But this particular night, he's acting really agitated, pacing the house and scratching at the back door. If we let him out, he'd dash out 10 feet and then turn right around and come back inside. It got worse and worse until he was running laps around the house, whining like a poltergeist movie. We thought there must be something outside that's freaking him out, but then he came into the kitchen and stood in front of the oven with his hackles up and barking. We were cooking a rack of lamb in there, and we realized we'd never made lamb in Tucker's lifetime before, so he'd never smelled it. Cooked meat isn't the first thing that comes to mind when I think of dog anxiety. But nonetheless, 4 years later, we make it again, and Tucker manages to close the bathroom door on himself and hide in the bathtub. My dog, folks, is afraid of lamb. What's a good story about your dog? Brat, Boston Rat Terrier mix, and Foxhound. My husband's dog is named Tucker, and he's an old guy now, too. The story he tells is this. Years ago, before we met, he had a neighbor friend help him install a doggy door. Then they proceed to try to get Tucker to use the doggy door. Neighbor goes outside with a dog treat in hand. My hubby stays inside coaxing Tucker out the door. Tucker's not having it. Since Tucker is a very food-oriented dog, hubby goes and gets a slice of pizza from the pizza that was just delivered. He goes outside with the slice of pizza, and now he and the neighbor are trying to tempt Tucker out with the food. Still, he's not coming out. What? Tucker loves food? What gives? They open the flap to see what's going on, and Tucker, having now gotten them both out of the house, is up on the coffee table eating the entire pizza from the box. My absolute favorite story about my dog. It definitely has to be my dog's behavior as a wannabe therapy dog. Not funny, but I love telling it because it makes me so proud. So I got Cy when he was 3 months old and I raised him myself. Everything he knows, I taught him. I'd had a husky before, but the first boy was raised by my parents as I was so young. But Cy was my project, and I did as much teaching as I did learning. I brought him everywhere I physically could. I took him to a local park where he'd meet other people and dogs. I'd loiter near an elementary school where kids walking home would inevitably interact with him. I insisted on bringing him every time we went to PetSmart for any reason. He has always been very brave and very confident with no shadow of a mean bone in his body. Never a curled lip or a raised hair on his back. In 2011, he went through all his medical issues and he handled them like a champ. He went from struggling and bucking and thrashing like a wild animal when I tried to give him eye drops to not even reacting when I tilted his head back and did it. He went from having to be placed onto a vet table to willingly walking onto one. He recovered well from his own ailments. In March 2012, my mother went to the hospital. Long story there, but to put it shortly, she was in really rough shape. If she hadn't gone to the hospital when she did, she probably would have been dead within the week. It was a stressful time. Poor Cy had to spend more time home alone than he ever did before, with both me and my father out of the house for work, and then visiting my mom. But he handled it fine. After my mom overcame her first hurdle, she was sent to an inpatient physical rehab and nursing facility because she'd pretty much lost all the muscle everywhere. On my second day visiting her there, I saw a black dog walk down the hallway outside her door. No vest, no special harness, no bandana, nothing to indicate the dog was a certified therapy dog. I found out that well-behaved dogs who were UTD on vaccinations were allowed to visit. You can see where this is going. He exceeded expectations. He was a bit excited the very first time we got there, but nowhere near as excited as he gets for places like PetMart or the vet. My mom wound up going back and forth between the hospital and the physical rehab a couple of times, and every time she was at the rehab, I brought Cy along frequently and he would say hello, socialize for a few, and then happily lay down next to the bed and relax. The nurses adored him, they'd get excited to see him, ask me when I was bringing him in next, if I could bring him during X shift, etc. Because the staff seemed to genuinely not mind him, I got brave. When walking down the hallways with him, I'd occasionally glance into doorways and see patients acknowledge him. At some point, I wound up asking these people if they wanted to meet him. Most of these were older folks, mostly in the 70s plus range. Some were permanent residents. A lot of them weren't completely all there in the mind anymore, and plenty more weren't really talkative. Let me just say, when they met my Sai, they lit up. And Sai was a complete saint. Like seriously, I know the dog is friendly. I did everything in my power to make sure he was comfortable around all different kinds of people. I never realized he'd actually pick up on the fact that some of these people are just not well and actually be much more calm and balanced around them, though. He would just sit next to them and let them pet him for however long, and when they stopped, he'd either lay down or we'd walk out, and he was completely, totally level-headed about the whole thing. It was amazing. He amazes me every day with little things, but that in particular was probably the best. Oh, and he goes to sleep in the vet's office. What's your favorite dog story? Let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe for more fun pet stories and commentary.